Draft Nasty with former Viking Corey Chavous. Welcome back to Bleav in Vikings for today, Monday, May 5th, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Wobschall. It's a BMac Monday as my partner and co-host, Bryant McKinnie, takes his normal spot. And we have a special guest to welcome today as well. It's Corey Chavous, former Viking safety, an 11-year NFL veteran, a Pro Bowler, 20 interceptions to his name. He's got some great knowledge and opinions to drop onto us about the 2025 NFL Draft and the Minnesota Vikings. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe to Bleav in Vikings. You can find us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Bleav in Vikings is brought to you by Nutrition Elements. Fuel your mind, elevate your wellness with premium sleep cubes, brain cubes, lion's mane, and more. Nutrition Elements meticulously crafts every formula, blending cutting-edge research with nature's finest ingredients to each drop, capsule, oil, cream, and powder, a blended mix to support your wellness journey experience. Nutrition Elements, pure, potent, and designed for a wholesome approach to all areas of your body and wellness. Free shipping on orders of $150 or more now. Plus, use the promo code WOBBY, WOBBY, and get 15% off your order. Nutrition Elements, nutritionelements.com. Fuel your mind, elevate your wellness, and elevate your football knowledge right now with Bryant McKinnie and Corey Chavous. How's it going, fellas?
What up?
It's going good, man. How y'all doing?
We're doing great. This is BMac and me every Monday, Corey, and you're joining the party. Courtesy of Bryant McKinnie reaching out to you because he knows that you've got it figured out when it comes to the draft. So BMac, appreciate you doing this and getting Corey to join. Let's welcome Corey in, man. Yeah, great job, BMac. Corey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. How are you guys doing, man?
We're good. BMac, I feel like we've talked about the draft. We talked about it before it happened, what we thought maybe the Vikings could do. We've seen, the Vikings really attack their offensive line, Corey, in this offseason with free agent signings and then with Donovan Jackson. From your vantage point, Corey, what do you see in the Vikings doing this offseason, and do you like it?
Yeah, I think one of the big the keys that I felt like was making an emphasis on kind of what y'all talked about with the offensive line, but I think also just overall, like adding some, continuing to add to your football team with kind of the personality of the group, like that, and that's kind of how I look at the Ty Felton pick as well. He's a similar receiver to, what you've already got on the roster in terms of the movement. And I think he can fit in and blend in relatively well. Same type of body type, same type of movement skills. And was one of the more productive receivers in the nation. I think he was tied for fourth in receptions in the country. So I felt like he was somebody that continued to develop during his career. And I just think that theme kind of continued throughout the draft. I mean, I really was a big fan of Kobe King. I thought he was somebody that, for a team that can continue to add some depth at that position, I felt like he kind of reminded me a little bit of Eric Wilson. I think I mentioned that a week ago, but it kind of reminded me of Eric Wilson coming out of Cincinnati. Maybe not quite as fast as Eric coming out of Cincinnati, but certainly a player to me that when it came to reading and reacting in the box, he was somebody that played at a pretty high level for me.
Cool. We'll get into more of these players and the draft stuff, Corey, but, for people listening to BMac and I who maybe don't catch your content or know what you're up to, tell them a little bit. BMac knows and talks football, but he's big into business and he's got stuff going on outside of football as well. What do you have cooking here post-playing career and sort of what keeps your mind stimulated?
Yeah, well, I mean, I do a lot of different things in terms of I actually started my business, my personal business, all the way back before I retired, and I'm talking about what I do in terms of rental properties and also high risk lending. I do a lot with tax lien foreclosures, tax redeemable tax deeds and stuff like that. But I started that right when I came out of the draft and into the NFL. So that's something that I really don't go into on podcasts or anywhere else because it's really not that important. But a lot of different things, I guess, is the best way to put it. So a lot of stuff to keep me busy.
Yeah. Hey, BMac, what made you think to reach out to Corey and get him to join us?
Because I know Corey is like, to me, I always look at Corey like Mel Kiper, who kind of knows everyone's stats, kind of knows their history and things like that. So I feel like coming out of the draft, he can kind of give the fans a little more insight on the type of players that we drafted.
Yeah. Yeah. What have you thought, BMac, of this offensive line makeover the Vikings have sort of undergone? Donovan
It
Jackson
just
was kind of the final piece of it.
It just shows me the direction that they're trying to do is make sure they protect their quarterback and have a good solid offensive line by recruiting, getting those young guys in there and making, those parts. You got a new center, new guard, and then now you got two new guards now and new
Yeah.
center. So you got three new offensive linemen. So I feel like that's what the area that you felt like you were lacking a little bit in last year and you're rebuilding it this year. You have your two bookend tackles who are doing a great job. So I feel like that was the area where they feel like they needed help, especially on offense, and they went and they handled it.
Yeah. So, Corey, with the Vikings situation on the offensive line, obviously they felt like the interior needed to be addressed. They get two free agents and they draft Donovan Jackson. The tackles were great, right? So I kind of feel like sitting here with BMac, it's like, do you consider the kind of left tackle that you have? So in the Vikings case, it's Christian Darrisaw. Does that inform the decision you make at left guard, do you think? And why do you think Donovan Jackson is a fit for the Vikings?
Well, I think one of the things that he does a very good job of, or that he has done, he's been pretty good on the move, and that's something that not only most people think that typically you will pull your offensive lineman just from at the guard position, but certainly there's some schemes, and Ohio State used some where they pulled in from that left tackle spot, kind of diversifying that running game even more. And I think he's always been pretty solid in pass protection. I had a chance to go watch him play against Ohio State against Michigan when they played Ohio State in
Mm-hmm.
2023, and I thought he held his own and played very well against Mason Grant, and some of those other interior line defenders in that game. But that's kind of per the norm. Now he did have an issue in 2022 with some holding calls. It was a little bit of over aggressiveness and in fact, against some of those same opponents, whether that was the Penn State game, the Ohio State game as well. Like there were some Rutgers. I mean, there were a number of games just 3 years ago. So he's kind of corrected some of those issues as he's gone along, and I think he's also shown that he gives you some position flex. Remember, you've had some injuries at that left tackle spot with Darrisaw. So I also feel like that a free agent that you picked up who really was more just a 1 year wonder, but a very talented former 5-star recruit in Logan Brown. I think players like that only add to that depth on the outside as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, like BMac, when you hear, I want you to listen to sort of the way Corey would say, what is the brand of football of Donovan Jackson? And then I want you to talk about if you would like playing next to that. So, Corey, is he a road grading run blocker? Is he a fleet-footed pass protector? What's the brand that Donovan Jackson has? And then Bryant, would you like playing next to that as a left tackle?
Yeah, I think I definitely would say he's more of a role grading, more of a man blocker. I mean,
Okay.
but gives you some zone capability because he does have some lateral agility. I do think he plays with the personality, very aggressive offensive lineman.
Okay.
So then, yes, I definitely would like to play with somebody who's pretty aggressive. Like, for instance, like we had Tony Finoti. I only got to play with him for one game though, but I feel like guys were kind of a little intimidated of him. So it was like, okay, I don't have to worry about this guy next to me because people are already intimidated, and he's a big guy. Even when I got with Kalechi Assembly out there in Baltimore, he was
Yeah.
a young, very like physical guy, and I like those. I like playing against next to those guys just because they're. I don't feel like I have to worry about them. Like I feel like they have their own thing, and I don't have to keep looking over and automatically like trying to make sure they need help. Hutch was definitely able to hold his own as well too. Um, I just feel like in Minnesota, a lot of times they always were making me look over to make sure he was good though. When it came to certain players, where it's like I still got my person too. But other than that, yeah, those type of guys, I definitely like the physical styles of those type of players next to me.
Yeah, and I feel like Corey, when you're spending the 24th overall pick on a guard, I know he's a rookie, but you're not expecting that Darisaw is going to have to be babysitting very much on the 24th overall pick, right? With Jackson.
Yeah, and I think you still have the advantage of, I don't necessarily know exactly what's going to be the situation. Obviously, you're thinking he's going to be a day one starter, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't think that Brandon will be back in that starting role, but that does give you some luxury because he has started and started quite a bit. If you wanted to bring him along a little bit slower, maybe even mess around with maybe play him at right guard, maybe give him. I'm sure they're going to cross train. And BMac, you're probably very familiar with that. You see it in offensive line. You have so many different combinations. You talked about a simile with that you played with in Baltimore. Remember, he was a tackle in college. You know what I'm saying? I think he ended up playing guard. So I feel like those things just kind of happen naturally during the training camp.
Yeah. What are you seeing, Corey, compared to when you and BMac were playing for the Vikings and offensive line and the types of players that came into the league compared to what you're seeing now? Are you seeing a difference, or do you think it's same old, same old? And if there's a difference in your eyes, what would you attribute it to?
Well, I would say that I think a lot of people feel like there is a difference in line play, but I don't necessarily really. I think the linemen continue to get smarter. The college game is forcing them. One of to me, the smartest players on a football team are always the offensive linemen. Not just me saying that. You can go back and look at Wonderlic tests or whatever you want to go back and take a look
Yeah.
at. Just because of, I think I have a lot of respect for offensive linemen and defensive linemen. A lot of times, the defensive linemen have to rely on somebody behind you to direct your eyes, right? So I'm giving them the calls. If I'm down in the box with the Mike linebacker, the same thing for an offensive lineman. Sometimes you're relying on that center to be able to give you. He has to be able to communicate which way you're gonna slide protection and things of that nature. So those guys have to be extremely smart, and that's one thing that I think continues on the uptick as offensive linemen continue to get smarter. And so, from that perspective, I think that's the number one thing to look at when you're looking at these linemen is how much can they intake, you know what I'm saying? How much can they actually grasp? And I think these guys they grasp quite a bit in a short amount of time with as many different plays as you see at the collegiate level.
Interesting. What do you think about that, BMac? Do you think there's when you watch games, when you're watching pro games, and then you're thinking back to when you played, do you see a big difference in what's happening in the trenches?
I felt like at a certain point that the offensive line had became a little more finesse. They were getting smaller guys to be able to do cutoff blocks and things a little bit. And you had your guys like Aaron Donald who were very physical, who were kind of able to displace some of those guys because they weren't as big as before because they were using them more. And that started transitioning towards the end. They wanted guys who can do no huddle, who could like do the cutoff blocks, there's like stuff like that. And then it's going back to like more of the physical offensive line, bigger guys. So I mean, I feel like it had its wave, and now it's like leaning back to the bigger, more downhill. And like the Eagles is a good example of having more downhill offensive linemen.
Yeah, interesting. I think, you talked about cross training, Corey, and, BMac's experience with that. But yours as well as a DB, you hear a lot of evaluators or analysts will talk about, oh, this guy can play nickel or outside corner, or, this guy could play safety or nickel. And I think we talk about that like it's easy to do, but it's not easy to do, to cross train and to be good. It's hard enough to be good at what you do. To be a versatile player who can fulfill multiple roles is challenging. Corey, what's your perspective on that? Do you think we over talk about that and make it sound too easy?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that I find, typically when the only reason I even played a long time was because of the multitude of positions, and everybody just simply said, oh, safety, but I was just a DB. I wasn't
Yeah.
really a safety, you know what I'm saying? So you kind of just accept that but at the end of the day, like, there's something to being a true DB. where you're multi-positional, and that's why you will play a long time. And you may not have the same type of numbers per se as somebody who's specifically a free safety because you're being used in a multitude of roles. And so that's something that you almost kind of you're really a jack of all trades, master of none to a large degree. But there is some value to that because there's an element of disguise that comes with some of these defenses. So I do think that it is a lot more difficult than people may think, particularly when you've got guys that move like Donovan Jackson did from guard out to tackle in the middle of the season and say, okay, go handle tackle now and figure out how to do that. That's extremely difficult.
Yeah, man. I totally agree with that. And I think BMac would come at it from, maybe a different perspective as a left tackle. And you tell me, BMac, like in a way for you, it's like left tackle's the blind side. You're going against the other team's best pass rusher for the most part. Like you don't necessarily like you want to be the guy, the left tackle, right? You don't want to be a guy who's swinging back and forth.
I always told you, like in the O-line locker room or meeting room, that those guys who could do the more you could do would make you more valuable. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like once you get to left tackle, like that's the position. Like you know what I mean? But if you can play center, you can play guard. That just makes you more valuable, especially if somebody goes down and you can fill in. So you're gonna hold more value there because you can do more than one position.
Yeah. Do you see that way, Corey, where as an evaluator of talent, when you see a prospect who's a tackle and you're just like watching tape on this guy and you're like, absolutely left tackle here. Does your value on him go up because it's left tackle?
Yeah. No, remember I actually did his, me and BMac were just talking about this not too long ago. I did his draft. So, okay. The value of him in that draft was extremely high. And there were some other tackles that he can tell you about from that draft that were pretty good as well. But they weren't as light on their feet at that size. Like you're not going to have as many people 300 and 40, 6'8", 6'7" that are light on their feet. So there's still the attributes that they have to have. Those you could be a left tackle. But you want to, a lot of times those left tackles that are that size or his size end up moving over to the right side in the NFL. So I do think, Mike, you bring up a great point. Like, how do you differentiate that? Like, because you almost are projecting most of these prospects and how they'll match up at the next level. And I think that a lot of those bigger tackles, I even think about one guy, I think he signed a free agent contract up from your way, BMac, Holland Pierce out of Rutgers, 6'8", 360 pounds. He was undrafted free agent this year. I forgot which team he went to, but big reason he didn't get drafted because people, I think, questioned Mike whether or not he was light enough on his feet to maintain at that left tackle spot. However, I think he, is going to have a pretty good chance because he's so long, so difficult to get around. And you have a lot of those guys that play a long time. Cornelius Lucas being one example when he came out of Kansas State. 6'7", 6'8", those 36-inch arms, they're just so tough to get around.
Well, plus when you play pickup basketball, they can play center for you, and that really helps you, at Lifetime Fitness, when you're on an off day. So yeah.
So y'all play some basketball together or no?
No. Well, if I did, I'd want BMac on my team. I have a feeling I'd want you on my team too, Corey. I have a feeling.
I mean, a defensive specialist.
Yeah,
Pick me up and we go golfing.
Okay, there we go. I can do that now. I can do that. Yeah. BMac wants to play tennis though, so I mean, I'm not.
No, he's told me he's pretty good. I was wondering, is he Mats Wilander? Is he more? I'm looking maybe Boris Becker. I'm like, he gave me some 1985 Wimbledon vibes. 17-year-old, the youngest player to ever win Wimbledon, Boris Becker at 1985. And then he came back and won it again in 86 at 18 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's more than
just. Yep.
It's more than draft nasty. It's tennis nasty. It's the whole thing, man. With you.
Oh yeah, I'm a sports fanatic. Like people they always peg me. They box me into this little draft name. It's pretty funny, but I'm a true sports fanatic. Yeah. 1986, that same year, Jack Nicklaus. That's when he won the Masters at 46 years old.
Wow. Yeah. Incredible, man. BMac, we gotta have Corey on more often. That's
Oh
what
yeah,
I'm hearing,
absolutely.
man. Because we can have him on year round. I mean, we can talk about March Madness when that's happening, the Masters when
Oh
that's
man,
happening.
Right.
that was
Come on.
great, wasn't it? Oh my
Uh-huh.
God, that was unbelievable.
Yeah, well, I just
thought
watched
that
the
was, I
Kentucky.
thought that was awesome, man.
I was at my son's soccer tournament all weekend. I was telling BMac earlier. I was peeking at my phone though for the Derby. I had my eyes on the Derby.
Oh man, that was incredible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I was. I wouldn't say an upset with 9-1 odds, but Sovereignty. I was happy. The oldest jockey was 47, right? Javier was 47. Oldest jockey, and by the way, those ages range from like 25 to 47. He's the oldest one and ends up winning it. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Let's tell me about the Vikings defense, Corey. You know, and from like a pass protection standpoint, because then BMac can kind of respond to it. Like, what does Brian Flores really covet? He's got two great edge rushers, right? In Grenard and Van Ginkel. And then they drafted Dallas Turner last year. And Dallas, he just didn't play a ton. And maybe that was kind of what they had in mind. That was by design. But tell me what you think Brian Flores and the Vikings are trying to do on the edge when it comes to those outside linebackers, those edge defenders. How do you feel about Dallas Turner, and what's sort of in Brian Flores' mind when it comes to pass rush on the Vikings defense?
Well, I think the first thing that the Vikings do, and I actually got a chance to finally, meet him last year. I came to one of y'all's Falcons game, and I was just giving him credit before the game. I'm such a big fan of Brian Flores. I just think he's a hell of a coach. And one of the things I told him right away was, hey, man, great job stopping the run. I think at the time going into that game, y'all were like number 1 or number 2 in the league against the run. And I think that sets up everything, right? You got to be able to stop the run. And give credit to Harrison Phillips and the impact that he's been able to have. But, they've also had some contributions from the backups, guys like Jalen Redmond and some of those guys that rotated. Certainly Jonathan Bullard was a big part of that a year ago in terms of the rush defense. But I think what you're asking about, Mike, and you obviously break this team down a lot more detailed than I would, but I feel like what they're trying to do on a consistent down-to-down basis is not have you distinguish the fourth rusher. And that, to me, comes through a lot of times you might be having two guys in the A gap. You might be – so what you're essentially doing and what he's essentially doing is creating the one-on-one for his designated pass rusher on that specific rep. That's why you've seen Van Ginkel drop a lot into the flats when maybe there are 4 other guys rushing, but that comes off of a disguise. And then you can see the same thing happening. And I can only imagine when they continue to infiltrate Dallas Turner into the scheme, how that's going to expand even to new levels. So that to me is what is always the most intriguing watching your defense play is who is the fourth rusher. And for you, BMac, and the offensive line, that's where I say they're so smart, Mike, because let's say you got 7 guys up there, right? You're trying to figure out as a center to number counter which way you're going to turn protection. Are you going to do a half slide here, man it up over here, bring them back over here away from the half slide? Are you going to do a full slide with 4 offensive linemen going over here, leave Bryant over here by himself, and then have the back come from the opposite side offset to help out Bryant for the blitzer off the edge? So, like, all of these different things are going on in a matter of milliseconds. And they've got to figure it out with Brian Flores having all these people moving around. And then what if you bring a safety? So, again, that's why I think the sack totals have been tremendous. And Van Ginkel's a perfect fit for the scheme, as he was in Miami for him.
Yeah, good point on the connection there in Miami, because that's certainly a big part of the eval, I'm sure, for the Vikings when they brought Van Ginkel in, and he fit like a glove. I mean, he was scoring touchdowns, picking off passes, sacking the quarterback. Right. He's doing the whole thing. So yeah, I mean, but see, BMac, like when you've got someone like you at left tackle, can you do what Corey's saying, where it's like, we're going to slide to the right here with those 4 linemen, leave 74 on an island with, Dwight Freeney, because we can trust it.
I've been left on the island a few times, so I think teams have trust in me to be able to hold my own. So
yeah, And that's why, going back to the evals, Corey, of left tackles, that's why when you got a good one, very, very high value on that guy. So BMac, that whole like that disguise and that confusion that Flores is trying to present the offense. From your standpoint, what did that look like and sound like way out there on at left tackle out on an island?
Well, that goes back to when Corey said it's all about having a good center who can recognize things, and the center is the one who directs everyone where to go. So once you hear the center's calls, I know who I have next. So having a good center, that's why it was always good for me. Like when I left Minnesota and realized that Matt Burke was in Baltimore, I was like, okay, this makes sense. I'm familiar with Burke. I can go there.
That's a good point, man. You end up winning a Super Bowl, right?
Right. But I'm very familiar with Burke and how he does things. So I would feel more comfortable going somewhere with somebody like that.
Yep. And, the Vikings, I think, have a guy like that from what I understand in Ryan Kelly. Their new center, Garrett Bradbury, moves on to New England. Corey, it'll be a new center here in Minnesota for the Vikings with Ryan Kelly. And then Will Fries is the new right guard, Donovan Jackson at left guard. It would appear. And you make a good point, Corey. It's not lost on me. Let's let practice happen here a little bit. Let's put some pads on before we just put Donovan Jackson in there right away. Let's have some respect for Blake Brandel, right?
Yep. And I think because you could go by grades and all that. I just remember just going back from the game again that I went to. They weren't facing in that game. Let's be honest, Mike, the best pass rushing unit, and they still had a little bit of success. So games like that kind of wear on. Like when you're thinking about, okay, we might, and in fact, you have some interior guys that had some success in that game, and they hadn't had a lot going into the game. So some of those things weigh on you when you're making your decisions. But again, I think pretty solid. Discount also that Rams playoff game. Look pretty solid overall in spots this year, Brandel.
Yeah. All right, last one. Well, I'll get us out of here. I mean, we're coming up on a half hour. I could do 5.5 hours with you guys talking football. I really could, but we can't do that. We got other stuff to do. I'll get you out of here on this one, though. Both of you, JJ McCarthy. It would appear that he's going to be the starting quarterback for the Vikings, not breaking any news. But it's a very curious spot to me because I think you've got a team and a roster that can win a bunch of games right now, but you got a quarterback playing his first year as a starter. We all sort of assume the quarterback's going to be a leader, but he's walking into a huddle full of men, veterans who've won before. So how does that work? What's that leadership dynamic like there?
I think he has to realize, even though he's in his second season, he has to realize that he is the leader, and because the quarterback's the leader. And I remember when I got to Miami with Tannehill. Tannehill was young, maybe his first or second year, and I would have to remind him everybody's going to listen to you. You control this offense and this team, so good or bad. So you have to kind of be a little more vocal. You can't look at people because you used to watch them playing as you grew up. You are now the one who's in command. So we basically listening to you. Guys are, lift you up along the way too to keep you going. But you're in control. So what you say is important.
Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree with BMac on that, just from the aspect of you may not have. I think what year was that for you, BMac?
For with Tannehill?
Yeah, Tannehill.
That was year 12 for me.
Yeah, exactly. So you may not, you see what I'm saying? So now instead of it being Tannehill, and I think that's something that's as we get younger in this league, Mike, right? BMac, we're getting young. We're going to continue to get younger. That's just the way this whole thing is set up now. And so that 12-year veteran may or may not be there. Now, typically offensive linemen do stay around a little bit longer. They have a little bit of a longer shelf, if you're good like he was, or Trent Williams or somebody like that. But at the same time, Zach Martin just retired. So I do think that it's important to have those alphas around when you start talking about what McCarthy could do. And I do think that there's some when you have Brian Kelly. I mean, I think that was this guy's been one of the better centers to me, one of the more mobile. You want to talk about mobility. It's incredible being able to do some of the things we talked about that Jackson can do. It only expands your offense. And Will Fries has played very well. So I feel like they've got some people that are going to come in there that he'll feel like he'll have to perform up to their level. And I think that's what BMac was kind of talking about.
Awesome, man. Really, really good stuff. The only thing we have to figure out is who's going to guard Steph Curry in that Wolves-Warriors series. Once we can figure that out, I think we're in good shape. Huh?
Well, I think I would imagine the guys that get most of the assignments probably gonna have a lot of McDaniel. That's what they were trying. They were running. To me, that's exactly what they were attempting to do. And then Thompson ended up last night. I mean, man, he did all right. I have to admit, both Thompsons did a really good job of guarding point guards in the first round. Both of the Thompson brothers.
Yep. Yeah, that'll be a fun series to watch. And this was a fun conversation for me. BMac, thanks for hooking this up, man. Corey, appreciate your time as always. We'd love to have you back on.
Thank you very much, Corey.
Oh, thank y'all, man. I really appreciate y'all having me, man. I had a blast.
Well, we know where to find you now, so we're going to run you down again and have you back on, all right?
All right, that's what's up, man. Well, I appreciate it, man. Keep doing great work, man, both of y'all.
All right, we will. Thanks, man. All right, BMac, see you next time, man.
All right.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Bleav in Vikings. Thank you, as always, for watching and for listening. Make sure you download, like, follow, and subscribe to Bleav in Vikings. And you can hear from Corey Chavous the next time he comes on and joins us as well. Great draft knowledge and great Vikings knowledge as well. All right, everyone. This is Wobby signing off for now on behalf of BMac. Always remember, keep believing.